Hey everyone, History Mystery Man here, coming to you today from the home office in Sylvania, Ohio. I wanted to show you something a little different today. By now, if you've been following me, you know that I have become good friends with a gentleman who lives down in Florida. He'll be 96 years young here in a few weeks. Jack Bills, originally from Salem, Indiana, World War II veteran, experienced airplane pilot, built more than 40 aircrafts over the course of his life. Survived at least 5 plane crashes. Just a remarkable man. I'm so fortunate to have met him. He shot a bunch of old footage, racing footage, back in the 1940s and 50s. You've seen some of it if you follow me here on the History Mystery Man. Remarkable footage from the early generation cameras, so the quality certainly isn't what you would hope for. It's a little rough, but it's all there. And it's so cool. You've seen footage of Salem Speedway. I'm going to show you upcoming some footage of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the early 1950s. But what I'm going to show you today is something you've never seen before, and that's typical of all his footage. Outside of his close family and friends, no one on planet Earth has ever seen this stuff before. He's entrusted me with the footage, which is why I'm showing you. Special treat for you today, footage from about 1951 or 2-ish, somewhere in there, from the old Armory on 4th Street from Louisville, Kentucky. Crosley race cars running on a little 10th mile concrete track. So I'm pretty certain you haven't seen Crosley race cars race before. The footage is rough, but again, it's there. It's fascinating stuff, and I wanted to show that to you today. But first, I just wanted to prep you a little bit on Crosley, the Crosley Brothers specifically, just to set the stage a little bit. The Crosley Brothers were from the Cincinnati area, Powell and Lewis Crosley. They were, in their day, the Henry Ford of the radio. They first mass-produced radios for the world. They were the largest radio manufacturers in the world back in the 1920s and 30s. They were remarkable men. Powell was the visionary. He had the vision in his mind, but it was his brother Lewis that put Powell's visions to work, put the pencil to the paper, and made it happen. Remarkable men. And beyond all they did, and it was a lot, they, of course, began manufacturing the Crosley car. Ultimately, it would fail, but not so much because of the product, because as Powell Crosley often was, he was way ahead of his time. It was, in fact, a compact car, really good on gas. As they came out more and more in post-war production, well, by now, you know, gas wasn't in short supply after World War II. We weren't conserving anymore. Families were big, and they wanted big cars. And so the idea of a compact gas economy car just wasn't popular at the time. But as we know, the economy car, the compact car, would come back full swing decades later. So it wasn't that the product failed so much, it was this, that Crosley was just ahead of his time. But Crosley did so much. In addition to making the first Harco radio in 1922, he invented WLW, the big radio station down in Cincinnati, 700 on the AM dial. That was Powell Crosley's dream. WLW, which became the largest radio transmitter in the world. It was at one time 500,000 watts. World War II soldiers could take great comfort because while they were overseas fighting the war, they could hear, yes, across the Atlantic, they could hear the radio broadcast signal from WLW back in the day. So instrumental, so innovative were the Crosley Brothers. They were the first to test a baseball broadcast out at Redland Field in Cincinnati. In 1923, Lewis Crosley just went out there, plugged in just to test, just to see if it would work, and called balls and strikes for the 5th, 6th, and 7th inning, unplugged and went back home, and the phones were ringing off the hook. Why didn't you broadcast the whole thing? Well, in 1924, they did just that, the first full-length Major League a live broadcast of a baseball game at Redland Field. And of course, as you may know, Powell Crosley eventually purchased the Cincinnati Reds. The Cincinnati Reds, a losing team for years, they were leaving Cincinnati, and Powell stepped in and stopped that and bought the team, bought the majority shares in the team, renamed Redland Field to Crosley Field, and the rest is history, including 1934, 35-ish, when Powell Crosley broadcast the first ever nighttime Major League Baseball game. Franklin Delano Roosevelt throwing the ceremonial switch from the White House to make it happen. First ever nighttime broadcast game of a major league game. They went on to manufacture planes. Powell Crosley was a pilot himself. They manufactured home appliances. Shelvadors. I don't know if you've heard that name, but the Shelvador, first ever refrigerator that when you open the door, it actually had shelves on the inside. It seems crazy now, but it was revolutionary then. Remember those old ice cube trays with the aluminum grid? You'd pull the grid and it would release the cubes. If you're old enough to remember that, Powell Crosley invented that. They did so much for the economy of America back in the day, including the cars. And one more note I'll say, when World War II came along, they completely switched production in their Cincinnati factories from making radios and or home appliances to wartime production, war supplies for the war. They revamped the production line. Lewis Powell, of course, the guy that put pencil to paper, made that happen. And they did one thing that was really revolutionary during World War II. They came up with the fuse, it was called. What was the fuse? It was a radio. It was a receiver and a transmitter that went into the nozzle of missiles that came off of airplanes or bombs. And what it did, instead of just hope you hit your target, the fuse would, with its transmitter and receiver, would find the enemy aircraft, locate it. The signal would go out from the bomb, find the target, the airplane, the signal would come back, and so the bomb could actually find its target, and when it got there, the fuse would go off and it would explode. So what I'm trying to say is the fuse was the first ever smart bomb that was manufactured, developed during World War II. Just absolutely remarkable, the technology back in the day. That Crosley Brothers were just fascinating. Their story is fascinating. I actually wrote in like 5 or 6 parts the history of the Crosley Brothers, and you can find that on my website, historymysteryman.com. Did you hear that cat? When my daughter comes to visit me, she brings the cat. Okay, no problem. Very talkative creature. We get along well. Yeah, I was telling you about my website, historymysteryman.com. I do a lot of writing there, and I've written several articles over the years about history, American history, racing, you name it. It's there. So I encourage you to go there. I did write a 5 or 6 part series on the history of the Crosley Brothers. So if you get a moment, check that out. But getting to it now, in the end, the Crosley car, in the winter months at in Louisville, they turned this Crosley car into a race car, put a number on it, and they raced these little Crosley cars on this little 10th mile track. Pretty incredible. The black and white footage, they raced in January. There was no heat in this place. The fumes were so bad they had to open the windows to make it was like being outside but inside. It was a freezer box, but nonetheless, race fans hungry for racing got it in Louisville indoors in January back in the early 1950s with the Crosley car. No one's ever seen this footage, and I'm excited to bring it to you now. Welcome aboard. Thanks for going along for the ride.
Okay, we got something a little different here now. This is Crosley Hard Tops in the Armory in Louisville, Kentucky back in the mid-50s, early 50s. And it probably was the old Armory on 4th Street there in Louisville, Kentucky. About all the Crosley in the country, all the Crosleys around was down there. Charles Fordyce would love to have been down there. I don't know where he went to any of that or not. They had Crosley Wreckers and Tommy Thompson, Milt Hartloft, and different ones drove in this. This is what happened in the winter when they couldn't race at Sportsdrome and the Midwest and through the cold months, so they raced Crosley's and the Armory at Louisville. Fumes really got bad in there, boy, and it was cold, and you better take your coat with you when you went to races. Track wasn't over about a 10th mile. It was concrete, and boy, it would get a little oil on it, they sure wouldn't stick too good. But the people in the Midwest had to have some kind of race to go to year-round, so they put Crosley's on, and look at that guy, pushed him backwards all the way around. He would never give up. They had a lot of fun, I'll tell you. Somebody spinning out a wreck on every lap. People never seen one of these. Should you at least see one, because I'm glad I took some pictures of this, because it's a pretty rare deal. I think it's run maybe one season here at the Armory. The old Louisville Armory on 4th Street there in Louisville, Kentucky. Tommy Thompson, Bill Kimmel, Milt Hartloft, and Bobby Watson. About everybody drove at Sportsdrome. We always run here. Have pretty good decent crowds. But they do everything. They'd go. Sometimes they'd go when they wasn't supposed to, and this looked like a bunch of kids racing. Crosley Hard Tops. This is about like what they call the legends running now. Look at these guys. They really put on a show. Everybody's a clown. But a lot of fun. That's about all it was. The days of the midget cars. This was the granddaddy of the legends they talk about now. A lot of fun back in the early days. A lot of memories. That guy turned over. He better get out of the car. I guess he may still be sitting in there, but he didn't stop for nothing. Action and the Louisville Armory. This probably was in 1950, I imagine. Maybe 51. Racing back in the early days. When it was too cold to run outside, they run in the Armory. They put on a pretty good show. Look like little old toy cars running. There's one getting out. I forget who won. Tommy Thompson hit the rail down here, and he's got out and was working on his car in one of these races. Had the hood up. They turned that back. He turned over and they just turned him back over. That's one good thing about a Crosley. A couple guys could turn him back over. Them two guys hit head on. Oh, there's Tommy Thompson now. He gets out. He was driving that, and he gets out and lifts the hood while the race going on. Look at him. Trying to work on it with the damn cars going by. That's a bad position to be in.